Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So no more swearing. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good to see you, man.
What's that?
Good to see you.
All right, I'm having a hard time hearing. Hold on a second.
To get some.
I had to turn the air conditioner off.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you now.
So we're all in masks and sitting in a socially distant arrangement because we're trying to figure out how to best do this
Okay.
live and at school. But we have a list of questions. Were you able to get those?
I did, and I wrote down responses. I'm ready to go.
Oh, thank you so much. Very cool. We're going to ask those questions, and then I figured that's probably not going to take the whole time. So if we want to have more of an informal chit chat afterwards, that's fine. If we sort of wrap up prior to 10, I don't think that's a problem at all. But we'll just have that chunk of time.
Okay, and also if if I'm answering questions and students have think of something else or want to respond to it, this can be more of a discussion instead of me just talking at people.
Oh yeah, that's great. I'm going to share my screen with the questions on it, just so we have that handy.
Okay, cool.
And then, where is it? Oh, I got to go back to, 1 second. I thought I had the right screen pulled up. Now I do. There we go. We've got you projected on our projection screen, so even with the shared screen, we can still see you.
Okay.
And then I have the audio from my computer hooked up to our speakers in here. If there's any issues with that, or if it's doing weird stuff on your end, let us know, because we can tinker with that if we need to. But the first person who's gonna say hi to you is our friend Kelly.
Hello. Hi. So my question is, have you always been into theater? And if not, when did you first discover that you had a liking for it?
All right, so I'm going to tell you a story. All right, and this is a true story. It kind of my career, I guess, in theater came out of a sibling rivalry. I have an older brother; he's 3 years older than I am. So anyway, I did all the normal elementary school stuff. I was a tree or whatever, and grass or whatever in elementary school. And then in middle school, I don't know if any of you know Mr. Dundor, Eric Dundor. He does a lot of musical direction at Theater Harrisburg and other places, Mechanicsburg High School. But anyway, he was my middle school teacher, and he had me doing like songs from different musicals. Like I remember doing one from Oliver when I was in 7th or 8th grade with my friend Alice, the song I'd Do Anything for You. And then, so in 8th grade, I was on the 8th grade wrestling team, which wrestled at with the 9th graders. So I would go from middle school up to the high school and be on the wrestling team. Well, the guy in 9th grade that was in my weight class, he was better than me. So I was kind of like what they called a scrub. I was like a punching bag for him. But my brother landed the lead in Hello Dolly that year at Cedar Cliff High School, and they didn't have enough guys to fill out the chorus or the dance troupe. So he came home one day and he said, hey, you know, they're looking for guys and they're letting 8th graders audition. So I was like, cool. So I went up and I auditioned and I got in the chorus and the dance troupe, and I had 2 lines. I was a waiter. And my brother was the lead. So that was my real first real experience with how musicals work and how, you know, how theater works. And I'll never forget my dance partner. She was a senior. Her name was Lori Pagana. She was very pretty. And I had an 8th grade crush on her. And so I told my coach I got cast in this, the wrestling coach, I said, I got cast in this musical. I'm going to miss some practices. And he said, oh, that's okay. So I missed a couple weeks of practices. And then I knew they were practicing on a Saturday. And I didn't have rehearsal that day. So I went to practice and I walked into the locker room past the coach's office, and he called me in. He said, hey, Burke, come here. And I said, yeah. He goes, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm here to practice. And he said, well, we bought team jackets and we didn't order you one. And I said, oh, okay. So I left and I was walking home and I'm thinking to myself, rolling around with guys on a mat, Lori Pagana. Rolling around with guys on a mat, Lori Pagana. And I thought, hey, if I get really good at this stuff, I might get the lead and I might be able to kiss the pretty girl someday. Now, this is an 8th grader thinking, right? But then since then, I got in all the musicals in high school and I wasn't really a good singer. I got bullied in high school because I wasn't a good singer by the other good singers. I was cast as Bill Sykes in Oliver, and he's got one song, and it's What's My Name? And the guys that were really good, I would sing, what's my name? What's my name? Bill Sykes. And they go, what's my note? What's my note? You know, so I knew right then musicals probably wasn't my thing. And I really liked the straight plays. So then I got, I hated high school. I was a really bad student. I was one of those kids that questioned, what am I ever going to use algebra for? I don't understand A plus B, you know? So there was, at the time, there was a school called Harrisburg Arts Magnet School, and they had a theater program run by Ann Alzadek. And so my summer between 9th grade and 10th grade, I auditioned and got into the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School. And that was really the start, because I found out that I liked straight plays better than the singing and the dancing. It seemed more calm and under control. There wasn't a director screaming at people to be quiet. So that was my real start. Was am I answering this question right? That was my real start to get into theater. Let me read the question again, make sure I'm covering it. Have you always been into theater? If not, when did you first discover you had a liking for it? So yeah, high school is when I first discovered I had a liking for it. And it was something that gave me a creative outlet, and I felt that I could be successful at it. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Caitlin. Share the screen again, and then I'll unshare the screen after we ask the question, because it's nice to see a bigger view on the projector, I think.
Hi.
Hi.
So my question was, what kind of training did you have to get where you are?
Okay, that's a good question, and it was a lot. So it started with the high school. The real training started with the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School, which is kind of what CASA has morphed into, or was birthed from. So I spent 3 years at the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School, with Ann Alzadek as my teacher, really great opportunity, just like you guys have. I mean, it was modeled just like your school. And I'm not sure if you know this, but she started CASA. And so when I was in 11th grade, going into 12th grade, I was fortunate enough to audition for and get into the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts. And that was held at Bucknell University at that time. And it was one of the best summers of my life. It was a 4-week intensive with students from all over the state. I believe our class was around 20, but it was, if you can just imagine spending 4 weeks on a college campus with a bunch of other artists in all different fields, music, dance, theater, visual arts. It was magical. It was really, really magical. And I learned a lot that summer. It made a lot of lifetime friends. And then, so yeah, 3 years of arts magnet school, Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts, and then University of the Arts, where I graduated with my BFA in acting and an emphasis in stage combat. So my training at UArts, I know there's another question about UArts coming up.
You can roll right into it.
What's that?
I would say just roll right into it. That's like, I'm trying to set it up somewhat chronologically, somewhat. I mean, just to try to like topically organize it. So yeah, that is the next one. Just, I would say go for it.
All right, well, there's one from RC in there, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh yeah.
I was going to follow up specifically with UArts, but it sounded like you were ready to launch into.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, UArts was really
Such a neat school. Like I'd love for them to. It is such a neat school. I would love for them to hear about what that was like for you. And I mean, it's still a very unique art school, and I love it. I think it's a really neat place.
Yeah. So again, just like Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts, that's all UArts was dedicated to, is arts. And when I went, so this is 30 years ago, all right. There were it wasn't UArts. It was two separate schools. It was Philadelphia College of Art and Design and Philadelphia College of Performing Arts. And while I was there, those two schools merged and became the University of the Arts. So my freshman year in theater, the seniors in the senior class, that group of people, that was the first theater class that was established at that school. The dean of the department was Walter Dallas. He unfortunately passed away this year. He was a driving force in Philadelphia theater. He was one of the founders of the Freedom Theater in Philadelphia, which is an amazing theater company. So he modeled, we were still like experimenting with what was going to work, how UArts was going to train actors. So the acting program was really, really great. My freshman year, there were 30 students, and they modeled it. They wanted to whittle it down. So by your senior year, it was a class of 8 to 12. So you're going from 30 down to an ensemble, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to build an ensemble. And it was hard. There were cuts. You know, you were nervous. Like, am I going to make this cut? Am I going to make it to sophomore year? Am I going to make it to junior year? Because the teachers were brutally honest. Like, if they felt somebody didn't have it, they'd tell you. And they make you feel bad, and they make you quit. Really not the best business model, and I'm sure it's changed. I don't know how UArts operates now, but when I was there, it was freshman year. I had a teacher, his name was Johnny Hobbs Jr. He was a great guy, ex-military, and it was his job to beat you down and then to build you back up. And it was a lot of monologue work. There wasn't any scene work that year. It was all monologue work and being truthful. The second year, my acting teacher's name was Alexandra Toussaint, and it was all method acting, Stanislavski. And that was all scene study. And we worked hard and a lot. We did probably 8 to 12 scenes a year. Freshmen were not allowed to act on main stage plays. So sophomore year is when we were really in rehearsals for main stage in the evenings, which was really great because we're working with the juniors and the seniors and learning from them. My junior year, my acting teacher was Irene Baird. If I knew she existed before UArts, I would have just studied privately under her. She was that good. And she did this type of technique. I think it was her own. It's called choice work. But you had to have, let's say we're working on a scene, and your character has to have an activity. You've got to be doing something. So if you get hung up on something, you go back to a choice. So you have like 6 choices. It's going to be hard for me to explain all of this, but it worked for me as an actor. This technique worked. Kind of like, you know, Meisner technique works for somebody. Stanislavski works for another actor. This choice works for me. All right. So what UArts was trying to do was trying to give us, every actor, a base, I guess you will, to go to. If you felt you were a method actor, you got that. If you felt that method didn't work for you, but choice work did, you got that too. If you felt that didn't work, but Meisner did, you got that too. So it's not, you don't get pigeonholed like, let's say, New York University, where you got into the Stella Adler School and that's all you do, right? So it was more, I felt it was well-rounded. And when I graduated, I felt like I got a good education in acting and I can go out and be truthful and be confident. So senior year was all rehearsal and performance. And we got to work with some really great directors. And that's who you learn from. You learn from good directors. So with all that being said, so freshman year, every incoming acting major was made to take stage combat as an elective. They were forced to do it. It wasn't an elective, it was mandatory. After that, it was an elective. So you got your basic stage combat stuff freshman year, and then if you wanted to move on into sophomore year, it was geared to being certified by the Society of American Fight Directors. So at the end of the second semester, you would take the test to be adjudicated and either pass or fail and be a certified actor combatant. So I was into that, and I did that, and I took stage combat every year I was there and got recertified before I left as a senior because certification only lasts for 3 years. Take a drink of water here. So when I left UArts, I felt that I had a good base to go out in the world and do what I wanted to do professionally. And it didn't happen right away, you know. I got out of school and I was like, okay, where do I go? What do I do? So I hung around Philly for a little while and I drove a cab to make money. And that year I got extremely ill. I came down with pneumonia and ended up going home and going to my doctor in Harrisburg. And he took a look at me and said I had pneumonia, and he asked how long can I be out of work, and I said how long should I be out of work? He said at least a month. So I moved back into my parents' house and got healthy, and then my dad got me a job at the factory, and so I made foam insulation as a temp, and lo and behold, here come these 2 people, Clark and Melissa Nicholson, and they started the Harrisburg Shakespeare Festival at that time. So that summer, they did 2 shows. Now they only do 1 show in June, but they did a show in June and a show in September. And their September show was Romeo and Juliet. So I auditioned for that and got the role of Tybalt because of my stage combat experience. Tybalt he's the main fighter in the whole play. So that was the start of my relationship with Gamut Theater, and I did not choreograph Romeo and Juliet. Our friend Paris Pete, who teaches at Shippensburg University, he choreographed Romeo and Juliet, and then he kind of handed over the reins to me. Paris is a great guy. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he kind of took me under his wing and let me have a go at it. And that really started my fight choreography business, if you will. I became Gamut Theater's resident fight choreographer. And then it just grew from there. So that was my UArts background. At the time, it was a great school. Again, lifelong friends, the artistic atmosphere, all the support. It was just really, really great. And, all the buildings that I acted in or worked in and studied in, they're gone. They got destroyed and they got new, bigger, better buildings. So I'm sure the program's a little bit different when I was there, but I'm sure it's good. I know it's top rated. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's so helpful. I like that emphasis they had on a variety of trainings. I do think that's important to not get bogged down in just learning one way,
Right, because not every technique works for every actor. I'm not a fan of Meisner. I think because I don't understand it, especially like the exercises, like your shirt is blue, my shirt is blue, your eyes are green, my eyes are green. I don't get how that tumbles into acting. I know it's been explained to me a couple times, but it just doesn't work for me. Other techniques do. So.
Our next question, the student who composed it is one of our virtual students, so they're not actually here, but I'm recording this and gonna make it available for all of the students, and I'll probably be screening it with the other classes too, so that they all get the guest artist experience. And but Mira's question is that she says, Dan, I'm aware that some people's background influences them as actors. Did where you grew up in Harrisburg influence you?
All right. It did influence me, especially the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School experience. So I went to my home school. My base school was Cedar Cliff High School on the West Shore. We're talking 1986, 1985, 87. And I went to Harrisburg Arts Magnet School, which was a magnet school. It was all kids from all different school districts. So I think that experience with all being exposed to many different ethnic backgrounds made me more well-rounded going into University of the Arts. If I would have just stayed at Cedar Cliff for my 4 years and then got into UArts, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is, I don't know, because it was just a different time. But growing up in I grew up in New Cumberland, so I had so much freedom as a kid, riding my bike everywhere, swimming in the creek I got to experience so much, and I think all that experience, all that diversity helped me. And that's what it is. It was the diversity, the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School, being able to be in Harrisburg. It just really helped me. And now, living here in Harrisburg and making a living as an artist, Harrisburg's a hub, right? So you're 3 hours from New York, 2 hours from Philly, hour and a half from Baltimore, 3 hours to Pittsburgh. For me, it's the perfect location. But yeah, I don't know if I touch on it much as an actor, but I know that where I grew up influences me. It has influenced me. I don't know if I could be any more specific, but
yeah. A lot of what you said about your Arts Magnet experience resonated for me with CASA, certainly. I can speak for myself. It's one of my favorite things about working here is we get students from so many different backgrounds in the school, even just geographically, like socio-geographically, like we've got really rural students coming from like an hour away. We've got really urban students coming from down the street and up to an hour and away. We've got kids coming here from York, Lancaster County, Perry County, Upper Dauphin. It's just like, so we really, it blends these different school districts in our area together, putting all these kids together. And they bring that, you know, there are plenty of schools around here where it's kind of a similar experience and there's a lot of common ground students can share, but like there's also a lot of differences they come with in their backgrounds that, I don't know, I see like connections happening. I see like students becoming more open-minded just because of that. And it's one of the things, it's like a simple aspect of what we do. Well, it's not simple for Mrs. Chambers, our attendance secretary. That's a lot to juggle with all the school buses coming from all the places. But you know, it's just sort of part of who we are and who we have to be. But it's a benefit. It's an absolute strength of the place for sure.
Yeah, and it helps when you move on in life, you know, because you've experienced that diversity and it's awesome.
Bruno is our next student who's here with a question for you, which I think is one of those super fun questions for any actor.
Hello, my name is Bruno Hernandez Cruz, and I would like to ask you, what would you say is your favorite role or roles that you've played in the past?
Thank you for that question. It's I would have to say my favorite. It's hard. It's really hard. I'm going to go by contemporary and classic. All right. So contemporary, one of my favorite roles was Jamie in Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night. That's one of my favorite plays, and I was introduced to it while I was in Harrisburg Arts Magnet School. And Alzadek showed us there's a movie version of it. And the actor playing Jamie in that movie version was Jason Robards Jr. And he was very young. The movie's black and white. Katharine Hepburn plays the mother. Dean Stockwell plays Edmund, the younger brother. Jamie's the older brother. And Jamie, he was a bad influence on his younger brother. And I guess so Long Day's Journey, if you don't know it, it's one day, and it's a dysfunctional family around a little after the turn of the century, 1900s. And Jamie was a Broadway actor, but he was, you know, the Broadway actor that it was the Great White Way back then, right? And he, after the show, or maybe even before the show, he would be the one in the bar, you know, being a bad influence and drinking and whatnot. But he was very cynical. He has a very cynical outlook on the world. When I had the opportunity to play him, Eugene O'Neill wrote Jamie as a 33-year-old. And I was 33 when I got the chance to play him. So it kind of fell in, and we did the whole play uncut. It was at Oyster Mill Playhouse. I usually don't do community theater. That was one of the things that was kind of drilled into me at UArts. They said, never do community theater. But I have done community theater if there's a really juicy role that I want to play. And that was one of them. And it was a great experience. And Robert, I don't know if you know this, the gentleman who played Tyrone, the father, was Sherman Hawkins. And it was the first time I met Sherman. And it was a magical experience working with Sherman. So yeah, Jamie and Long Day's Journey into Night, my favorite. I'm going to go on to another contemporary, and this was one of Open Stage of Harrisburg's first shows when they were out on Jonestown Road in this really small little box of a theater. But I got the chance to play Vince in Sam Shepard's Long Day's Journey, or not Long Day's Journey, Buried Child. So Vincent, I was a huge Sam Shepard fan when I was in high school. I just thought his writing was so good and it connected with me. Like the character of Wesley in Curse of the Starving Class, I totally connected with him when I was 17. But I got the chance to play Vince. And Vince is a 22-year-old, and I was 18 when I was playing him. So there's a big gap between 18 and 22. I know it doesn't sound big, but it's big. There's a lot of life that happens in between 18 and 22. But it was a great role. I mean, I get to smash whiskey bottles. I get to cut the screen and come through. I get to tease my uncle with his amputated leg. It was just so much fun for a teenager to do. And that was the first time I was reviewed. This woman, she's passed away now. Her name was Sharon Johnson, and they used to do reviews in the newspaper. And I'll never forget, I got one sentence. She said, Dan Burke cannot manage Vince's mood changes. I'll never forget it. And I was crushed. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I just got trashed. And I went to the theater that night to do the performance, and Don Alzadek, the director, he came up to me and he knew that I read it, and he said, listen, don't pay attention to that. You're doing what I want you to do. That's one person's opinion, and that's it. So just keep doing what you're doing. So that made me feel good, and that was a lesson that I took with me. So yeah, so Jamie and Vince, classic Sir Toby Belch in 12th Night, another drinker, but what a fun role that is. He's the bad boy and gets, starts mischief and stuff and has a lot of fun. But I guess my favorite role that I've played, and I had the opportunity to play him twice, once for Gamut Theater and once for Theater of the Seven Sister in Lancaster, and that would be Macbeth. It was just such a juicy role, and his path is so interesting. And the fact that I got to do it twice with different casts, different directors, it was a completely different character the second time I did it, had to be. And a lot of actors don't get an opportunity to play the same character again. And so I feel very fortunate on that. But yeah, Macbeth is just such a really, really great character to explore. There's so much to it. There's the relationship between him and his wife. There's the witchcraft that goes on, the black magic that he delves into. And it's just, I just can't say enough about it. It's just, so those are my favorite roles. Yeah. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, when I saw that question, I was like, ooh, everybody wants this question. Because what a fun thing to get to talk about. That's one of the best things about getting to do what we do is reminiscing about it afterwards. There's so much you can learn after the fact too, even just in those fun combos. Ooh, yeah, I was going to ask you about what's your favorite play, or what's one of your favorite plays. I know that probably the ones you already talked about are up there, but what's another one?
I really like Curse of the Starving Class. Sam Shepard, it's raw. I like raw things. I wrote down a couple others. Macbeth, LDJ. What's LDJ? Well, Long Day's Journey. American Buffalo is one of my favorite plays. And I think it's, again, the writing. So Shepard's writing is awesome, and David Mamet, the way he wrote American Buffalo. And I had the chance to play Donnie when I was in college. He's the shop owner. It's a 3-person play. And it's just written, if you get a chance, read it, because it's written so conversationally. If somebody says something halfway through the sentence, the other actor's gonna say, yeah, yeah. So it's natural responses. And it's super hard to memorize because of that. The other two actors and I would get together every evening before the performance and sit in the hallway and speed through it because it was just so hard. And that's one of the plays where I had to save it or bring it back because the actor, my buddy Chris, he was playing Teach, which is pretty much the most juicy role in that play. We're in Act 1, and he says this to me. He says, if you want to remember something, you write it down. Where do you put it? You put it in your wallet, right? Well, that's the line from Act 2. What he was supposed to say was, if you want to know the value of something, you look it up. You look it up in the blue book, right? So the scansion sounds the same, kind of. Well, he went into Act 2, and I knew he was there. I knew he wasn't coming back. And I was like, oh, no. So I said, I had to improvise on the spot. And I said, hey, you want to see the book? You want to see the blue book? And right away, it clicked with him that he had jumped, and he came right back. He was like, oh, yeah, let's look at the book. But yeah, the way that play is written makes it one of my favorite plays. And I had the opportunity to direct a play last year called Sylvia. And that play grew on me. It's a fun play. I can't say it's one of my favorites, but it's fun. Yeah, there's just so many. There's just so many out there. But yeah, Long Day's Journey is just beautiful and heart-wrenching and so truthful and honest. I think those are the plays I go towards. I'm not a Neil Simon guy. So yeah, I like the juicy, raw, real stuff.
I love, I mean, there's the stretch of Mamet plays that are so strong. There's like a 10 to 15 year span in his career where there's just like some really spitfire work coming out. And American Buffalo is probably my favorite of them too. I agree with you. It's like musical, the rhythms of it, the way the language becomes sort of more than just words. So that's a fun one. I love this next question from here. Yeah.
I'll tell you something about American Buffalo when we did it. It was directed by my freshman acting teacher, Johnny Hobbs Jr. Well, the way David Mamet wrote it, there's a lot of pauses in it. It's line, pause, line, pause, line, pause. Johnny, when he directed it, he said, take out all those pauses. He said, you're going to earn that pause. And you'll hear that in your training experience, earn the pause. We didn't pause throughout the whole play until the gun came out and was laid on the table and people backed away. So there's a gun on the table and there's the pause, there's the silence. And that gun on that table represented pending violence, which is so much more interesting than actual violence, because anybody could pick it up, anything could happen. So I came away from working on American Buffalo with that knowledge base too, which helps me as a fight choreographer. And I constantly say pending violence is so much more interesting than the actual violence. But yeah, I just want to bring that up about American Buffalo, how it's written and how my one director said, nah, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to make it. And it was more interesting. It was more exciting, and it flowed. It wasn't a 3-hour play. It was quick. So thanks.
Absolutely. I love this next question. Ramir is not here today, but he wrote, if you could have a fight scene with anyone in the world, who would it be and why? I don't know if he meant like you actually being in the fight scene too, or choreographing it, or both, but I'll let you take that one and run with it.
Yeah, I took it as who I would want to fight. So I wrote a couple. Christian Bale.
Yeah. Yeah.
because I just think it would be so cool to fight Batman. I probably wouldn't win, but who doesn't want to be in a Batman fight, right? One of my favorite fights is a Batman fight. It's when he's fighting Bane. To me, that fight is so spot on and top notch, because the character of Batman is fighting. He starts off by the rules, and he's fighting like a superhero, but Bane breaks him down, and Bruce Wayne starts fighting, and it gets sloppy, and you can see in the course of the fight it changes, and Batman's tactics change, and Bane just takes advantage of that and breaks his back. It's just one of the coolest fights I've ever seen. But yeah, I would like to fight Batman, and if I got the chance to choreograph it, I would win. But chances are I wouldn't win fighting Batman because I'm Dan Burke. I'm not a superhero. So sword fighting, I would love to have had the opportunity to fight with Errol Flynn, who is an old time actor, but he was considered one of the best swordsmen of his time. So yeah, I'd like to fight Errol Flynn and win, obviously. But then there's another superhero that I would love to have the chance to fight, or fight alongside, I would say, because I love the character of Daredevil. Those fight scenes in that Netflix series when it was out were mesmerizing. I mean, the way they're filmed, and how the guy's blind and he's just destroys people. It's yeah, I'd lose with him, I know that, but I'd love the opportunity to try to fight him. So those are my picks.
That's fun. And it brings back a lot of memories of some really awesome cinematic fights.
Yeah.
Ooh, Shane's got our next question. We'll bring Shane up.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about directing?
A lot of prep work. Director should know the play so much better than the actors. The director should almost have the whole thing memorized. But I think my favorite thing about directing is the guidance for the actors. So I consider myself an actor first. And as a director, I treat actors the way that I would want to be treated, with respect. It's my feeling that it's not the director's job to sit there and tell people where to go and how to stand. I look at it more as teamwork, but I'm kind of like the guidance of that team, or the leader of that team. But I don't want to put myself in a leadership position. I want to be on this. I want the actors to feel that they're on the same level as me. All right. So the way I direct, and my favorite part about it is I ask a lot of questions when I direct of the actors, and I ask a series of questions, and I keep asking questions until I get the answer that I want from the actor. And I say, okay, let's go with that. And I think that helps the actor think that they've figured it out on their own, instead of me saying, do it this way, right? So I guess that's my favorite part, and seeing the collaboration and seeing the end product. It's tough for a director, and Robert, I know you can attest to this. When it goes up, there's an emptiness. There's the work's over for the director, and it's like, oh geez, now what am I going to do? So I guess, yeah, the collaboration, the creating of something good and fun, the mutual respect. I directed Mr. Campbell in a fun play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. He was Hamlet, And I know that was my first directing experience, and it was so scary because the play's an absurd play. So we had to do, I did some unconventional things that other people would think, oh my gosh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, it's an absurd play, so we're going to be absurd. We had a laugh call in that play because I wanted the tragedians to laugh the same way every time at the player's jokes. Absurd stuff like that. So I guess my favorite part of being a director is the whole creative process, but working with the actors and making the actors feel respected and confident in what they're presenting.
I loved working on that with you. That was a great time. And one neat thing about that role, Hamlet in that show is a supporting character. He's a smallish role. And we had such a good group. It was really fun to watch all of them putting everything together. And it's fun to be able to be like, come on, and it's almost like a spoof of Hamlet. So when he comes in, it's like you can sort of come in and bring the laughs by just like going hard at that moment, but then like sit backstage and listen to all this amazing, thoughtful, weird, wonderful dialogue from everybody else.
Yeah, it was a great cast, really good cast.
Ooh, this one's definitely a question for me, probably, but I wanted to throw it in here. I know you've done a lot of guest professorships, and I don't even know if that's the right terminology, if I should say what I should call it, but I know that you've worked on a lot of different college campuses, both being hired to choreograph a show, but also being hired to teach stage combat classes and workshops. So I'd love to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that experience, because I mean, that's right down the road for a lot of these guys. And I think they're a really special place to get to work, whether you're a student or doing anything else, teaching or anything else. College campuses have just kind of a special vibe of their own. And you've got a lot of experience working on a lot of different college campuses. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I started out doing master classes on college campuses, like 4 hours on a Saturday, if you will, and hand-to-hand combat. But then there's a gentleman in the area, his name's Dr. Kevin Pry. He is a dramaturg, and he runs Lebanon Valley College's theater department. And they don't really have a real theater department, but he has me in about every 2 years to do a semester in stage combat. So it was a one-day class, and it was just really great. What I do, so I do Lebanon Valley College, York College, and I just did a big stint at Fairfield University in Connecticut. So when I teach a class like that, where I'm an adjunct professor and it's a semester-long class, I break it down into hand-to-hand combat and rapier, or rapier and dagger, if I can. And so stage combat, I like to say, is 90% acting. So it's also an acting class. Anybody can throw a punch, but you got to act it, right? So I put my stage combat classes to a scene, and it's the final fight between Macbeth and Macduff. And I do that scene because it separates. There's words, they fight, and then there's words, and then there's
amazing trash talk in that scene too. Just a lot of amazing trash talk, like really eloquent, poetic, but at its root level, they're just like trying to intimidate each other, and that's really fun.
Yeah, and it works so well because, like I said, you get there's words, they fight, there's words, and then they fight again. So it lends itself to two different styles of fighting. So I do hand-to-hand and then rapier and dagger, or rapier, and the students get a lot out of that, I think. And I choreograph as long as I can. I make them ridiculously long because I want to give them as many moves as possible that they can work into this fight. I want them to learn as much as they can. But working on a college campus it's a freeing atmosphere. There's not as many rules, if you will, that like in high school. I'm able to speak as I would like to speak. You know, if a swear word comes out, oh well, you know, I'm not going to get in trouble for it. And it's much more relaxing. It's the atmosphere. I try to make my classroom atmosphere for my college students. I want them to feel like they have some sense of ownership, if you will. I encourage them to ask as many questions as possible. So yeah, being an adjunct for me, for what I do in stage combat, is really freeing. And I don't have much homework like a lot of other professors do. Like I'll ask my Lebanon Valley College students to keep a journal because I got to show something on paper. So they have to hand in the journal mid-semester. I look at it and hand it back and say thank you. You know, and everybody, I want everybody to get an A in my class. There's no reason why you shouldn't. All you got to do is show up. Show up every day. I make attendance like 80% of the grade because if you're in a stage combat class or an acting class and you're working with a partner and you don't show up, you didn't hurt yourself, you hurt the partner too. You let somebody down. So attendance is huge. Listen, I'm going to tell you one thing. If you guys go on to be actors, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but on time is late. 10 minutes early is on time. So because people want to work at the call time. So I'm huge on attendance with my college kids. I try to drive it home because when you get into the real world, people aren't going to want to work with you if you're unreliable. They'll drop you in a minute because everybody's replaceable. So but yeah, I love working with college and the students, I think, on the college campus have a sense of freedom because they're away from home for the first time in many cases, and they are eager to explore. So yeah, I'll work at a college at the drop of a hat.
All right, I'm going to ask Nyla to come up here. She developed a question that delves into yet another unique area where you have training and experience, and it's relatively new to the field. So it's a chance for them to learn a little bit about it, certainly. So come on up, Nyla.
Describe what it means to be an intimate choreographer, and how do you communicate with athletes to make them feel comfortable and safe in the
Okay. Yeah, so I'm working on I'll give you a little background about, I'll answer your question, but I'll give you a little background first about intimacy direction. So I'm working on a web series in New York City. It's called Blue Wall, the series. I've been working on this thing for, oh my gosh, 6 years, I guess, off and on. You know, they'll bring me up, do some fights in a scene, and now I'm doing intimacy with them also. But when I was up there about 4 years ago working, there was, I saw on the internet that there was a training session for intimacy directors in Manhattan at the time that I was going to be there working on Blue Wall, and it worked out that I could take this class. So I did. I took the class on intimacy direction. So I go to this class, and right away when I walk in the room, I'm one of the only guys. There's maybe 2 or 3 other guys, but it's a lot of females. And I can tell from the conversations that they're having, a lot of them know each other, and from the conversation, they're fight people too. I'm like, they're sounding like stage combat people. And then in through the door walks this older gentleman, bald head, and I said, oh my gosh, that's J. Allen Sudduth. Now, J. Allen Sudduth is one of the founders of the Society of American Fight Directors. He adjudicated me when I was in college. He's the one that certified me in stage combat. And here he is in this class, and he's taking the class. So I'm like, all right, I'm in the right spot, all right? And he and I ended up being scene partners too, which was really, really cool. So I got my training through Intimacy Directors International. I'm gonna bring up the question again to make sure that I answer it properly. Can you describe what it means to be an intimacy choreographer? And how do you communicate with the actors to make them feel comfortable and safe in an intimate scene? Okay, so that's how I got to be an intimacy director / choreographer. I ask, again, like a director, I ask a series of questions to start out. Let's say I'm working with a couple that has to have an intimate scene where they kiss. And these two actors don't know each other. Well, we need to have them know each other, right? So the first question I ask is, are you right-handed or left-handed? Does anybody know why I would ask that question? Yes. I can't hear the answer, the question.
So I think Shane said, is it so you know where to put the hand on the face potentially?
Nope. So it's if the couple has to kiss and you're right-handed, your natural instinct is to go in and cock your head to the right to perform the actual kiss. So if I'm working with a right-hander and a left-hander, guess what's going to happen? They're going to bump noses, right? So we got to figure that out from the beginning. Which way are we going to go? Okay, so maybe that's not the first question I ask, but that's a definite question that I have to ask. The first question I really do ask is, I ask the actors what your definition is of consent. And most everybody's going to have a different answer, and that's okay. It's their definition of consent. And so they both hear it. Both actors hear what the other actor's definition is. And then I remind those actors that, okay, that's your definition. I want you to know that you own it. You own the consent, and you are absolutely able to take it back at any time because you own it, all right? Then if they don't know each other very well, I will leave the room and I'll leave them together. And I will ask them to share a secret about themselves that not too many people in this world know. Like, for instance, you know, I collect stamps or something bad happened to me in the past and nobody knows about that. But just it doesn't have to be that deep, but I want them to share something or know something about the other person that not everybody else in the world knows, but that's something that they can share, that knowledge, all right? So then I lead them through different exercises of eye contact, looking at each other, sharing the energy, sharing energy through the eyes, sharing energy, drop down into the chest and share that energy and take steps closer in together. So there's exercises that we go into to make the actors feel more comfortable with themselves. There might be a palm to palm exercise where they start moving together and not necessarily leading each other, but so then once I get them to feel very comfortable with each other, then we hard block the intimacy, whether it's a kiss or whatnot. So we do it just like a fight, all right? So if I look at the script, so we gotta get the context in there. Who's the aggressor? Does the other person really want to be kissed? Or do they accept it? Where's the hand go? You know, does it start here? And I also ask a question. We talk about fences. I ask the actors, do you know what a fence is, right? Like a white picket fence. It's a barrier, right? So people have different fences on their body where they can't be touched, right? So there's the obvious areas, but you might not know. You know, you never know what somebody's coming into the room with, and that's kind of my job to kind of figure it out a little bit. So the web series that I'm working on in New York, the main actress, she doesn't mind being touched on her body except for right here. You cannot touch her neck or she freaks out. Now, I wouldn't know that had I not asked the question, right? So, you know, I tell actors, I can't be touched here. You can't touch my ribs because I'm the most ticklish person on this earth and I'll just giggle too much. So this is a fence for me. So it's a non-touching area, right? So we break it down that specific, right? And then we break it down into, okay, where I ask the questions, where do you feel like you want to touch this person? Are you the aggressor? And then we hard block it, and it's the same way every time after that. And it makes, I'll tell you, every single actor that I've worked with on any production has been so thankful for this work because it makes them feel so comfortable, safe, and secure. And it goes hand in hand with my stage combat. And it's important work, and I'm glad it's out there. And it all stemmed from the Me Too movement. So I'm proud that I can help people in that way, and someday I look forward to doing it again, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon.
I think that's so helpful. I mean, to be completely honest, like that was helpful for me. I don't know much about that field. I think it's, you know, I think it's a long overdue kind of thing, but I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't think of it until I heard of it, you know, like of course we should have that. Of course we should.
Absolutely.
So the last question is just kind of to give you a chance to wrap things up and send them off with some advice, which is, as somebody who is living their dream and has been for a long time, what advice would you give to these theater students as they get ready to finish high school and pursue their future dreams and goals? And certainly not everybody in here is planning to do this for the rest of their lives as their main career. But I think almost all of them are going to take a lot with them from this experience, and some of them definitely are eager to keep going and see where they can go with it too. So you know, you can speak from your own experience and just whatever advice you think would be best.
Sure. Well, I said it before, be on time. and this goes for any career, I guess, not just acting and like choreography or whatever. I wrote down a couple things. Never burn a bridge unless you have to. Reputation is everything. You want people to want to work with you. And that means that you should respect everyone and realize that people are coming from different backgrounds and you don't know their circumstances. So empathy is important. You should be kind, courteous, and considerate to everybody. And I think one of the hardest things that I had to learn, especially early on when I was in my 20s, is that when you walk into a room, you're most likely not the smartest person. And there's always something that you can learn from other people. So I guess it's basic stuff, but I think, you know, hearing it helps. You have to, if you're an actor or an artist, you have to have a very strong work ethic. It's not easy. I've been so fortunate and so lucky to be doing this full time for the past 12 or 14 years. And that's all I do is my art. COVID in March brought that to a crashing halt. And I don't know when it's ever going to come back. So it's the dream turned into a nightmare for me, but it will come back, I know. But just the basics, I think, is what you should walk away with into your future. Is just be kind and courteous to each other. You know, be on time.
Thank you so much, Dan. We're going to give you a round of applause. Thanks so much for your time. And
Thank you for having me come in. CASA is near and dear to my heart, just because it came out of the Harrisburg Arts Magnet School. So I tell Mr. Campbell every time he has me come in that it feels like I'm coming home, and that just makes me feel so good. I'm going to be smiling for the rest of the day. I know that, sitting on the beach.
well, enjoy your vacation too, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Take care, friend.
You've got to wave at the Zoom. Bye.
Yeah.